Good morning, friends. Today we are going to discuss about the pattern of the feeding and digestion in the lower metazoans. Already discussed in the previous lecture about the different feeding patterns as well as digestive processes in the different categories of the animal on the basis of the feeding patterns. Here, in case of these lower metazoans, basically they are the primitive metazoans. The simplicity which is observed in terms of the body organization as the cellular level, cell and tissue level, or even though in some cases tissue and the organ level. Here in these animals that lower metazoans, which is where the body which is unsegmented, radially or the bilaterally symmetrical, as well as diploblastic in nature. Even though in case of the coelomic cavity, that is a primitive type, especially the acoelom and the pseudocoelom which is observed in that lower metazoans. That lower metazoans are the Porifera, Coelenterata, Platyhelminthes, Ascalminthes, Entoprocta, and Acanthocephala. These are phyla which are included in that lower metazoans. What are the categories related to the feeding and the digestions? Here they are grouped into three categories. One is the microphagy, which observed in the poriferans. Second, that is a macrophagy, which is observed in the Cnidaria or the Coelenterata and some of the primitive platyhelminthes, where they depends on the large food materials. While the third one, that is a feeding on the liquid as well as the soft tissues, that animals which lives inside the body, and hence that term is the endoparasite, which include the some of the platyhelminthes which are well adapted and lives in that body of that animal, and second one, that is the nematodes. After that, step by step we focus about that three categories. First moves toward the microphagy, that animals or the group of the animals, that name is the porifera phyla. First of all, the feeding of that animal. Here the commonly known as the sponges, which are primarily the filter feeders here, utilizing food particles which are suspended in the water and captured by the special modified cells present in that body. That name is the choanocytes. That food particles, when they utilize in the form of the food as well as the digestion, which consist essentially of the bacteria, microscopic animals, as well as the plants, many microorganisms, even though the detritus material, that is the organic debris, which is from the plant or the animal origin here. As the water current along with that food particles which enters the body with the water through the numerous pores which are surrounded to that of the body, that name is the ostia, which allows the entry of only the small particles. Here in this diagram, that two layers are present. Outermost, that name is the pinacoderm, and just inner one, that is a choanoderm. Pinacoderm, that pinacocytes which are present in that layer, while toward the choanoderm, the choanocytes are present. In between the two layer, the another layer is present, that is a mesohyl or the mesoglia, or even though we say that mesenchyme here. Here, as the number of the pores are present, which are very small, and that is the ostia, through which the water current which is enter via the water canal system, and that water along with the food material which enters into the inside large cavities present, that is the spongocoel, and from the spongocoel the water current which passes outside a single opening which is very large, and that name is the osculum. After that, that spongocoel internally lined with the choanocytes, and hence that choanocytes basically the flagellated cells, and that term is the flagellated jet chamber. The beating of the flagellate choanocytes which causes the water to circulate through their collars, allowing the particles to adhere to them here. Here, that special type of the cells which are present in the outer side of the that flagellated chamber, or even though we say that spongocoel here. Here, this is the spongocoel, and inner side here, the number of that choanocytes or the collar cells are present here. and which has the ability to collect that food particle and adhere to them here. The microvilli of that collars, which acts as a filter for trapping the food particles and move toward their bases here. It means that simply that collar microvilli, which has the ability to filter the special or the small food particles, trap that food particles and moves toward the base of that choanocytes here. Here, in case of this, that food particles which are engulfed by the special action, that is a pseudopodial action, is of the choanocyte, and which is located at the base of their collars and then taken up into the food vacuoles here. Step by step, what happens? That food particles, it moves toward the from the base of the that collar, and after that it moves toward the inner side of the choanocyte by the phagocytic nature of the food vacuoles here. In choanocyte, the food undergoes partial digestion, and partly digested food is then passed to the wandering number of the cells which are present at the base of the that choanocytes, and that is the amoebocytes, which are specialty or specially observed or located in the mesenchyme or the mesenchyme cells. Here in these amoebocytes, the digestion process which is completed, and after the digestion process completed, the undigested residues when present, they easily eliminated by that cells with the outgoing current of the water, and that water which is passed out from the body through the osculum. In addition to that, as the digested material from the amoebocyte, they are transferred to the special type of the cells which are also present in the mesenchyme, that is the thyzocytes. That thyzocytes which are located in the mesenchyme, which have the pseudopodia and acts as a storage cell which filled with the food reserve. It shows that digested food material which are stored by the thyzocytes located in the mesenchyme. Here that amoebocytes then distribute and digested the food material to the various body parts of that animals here. After that, the next one, after the microphagy, moves toward the macrophagy, where the Cnidarians and some platyhelminthes which adopt such type of the feeding habitat here. In case of the Cnidarians, first of all, moves to the feeding. Their Cnidarians are the carnivores, and very few members which are totally depends on the plant materials here. And as the carnivores, they catch their food by using the special modified cell organelle, we say that is a nematocyst here. Here they prey upon the small aquatic animals such as the insect larvae, crustaceans, many annelids, worms, or even though the nematodes also. That nematocysts are not the cell but are the cell organelle and located in the specialized cell called the cnidoblast or the cnidocyte, also known as the stinging cell. That is, that cnidoblast or the cnidocyte are the special modified cells, and in that modified cell, the special modified cell organelle is present in the form of the nematocyst here. That cnidoblast has the different functions as per their necessity, that is involved in the food capture, locomotion, offense and defense, as well as anchorage of that body to the suitable substratum also. Here, in case of the feeding of the Cnidarians that continue, especially the nematocyst, after the cnidoblast, inside that the nematocyst, that cell organelle is present. Each nematocyst, which consists of a tiny bulb filled with the poisonous fluid, or also known as a hypnotoxin, which is a mixture of the proteins as well as the phenols here. Here, this is the cnidoblast, and inside that a small sac-like structure is present and which is completely filled with the poisonous fluid. That name is the, or also known as a hypnotoxin, and the mixture of the protein as well as the phenols. Its outer end bears a long, hollow and tubular thread coiled like a watch spring inside the sac here. Here, a coiled that thread-like structure is present inside that sac here at the terminal end here. The base of the tube has a swollen shaft which bears three large stylets and three spiral rows of the spines here. At the base or terminal end of that thread-like tube or the coiled tube, which bears that three large stylets here. These are the stylets are present, which are three in number, as well as that stylets along with that surrounded by the three rows of the spines also. The outer wall of that cell, which has the hair-like nidocele, that is sensitive to touch here. Here, outer wall, it means that here. The outer wall where a small sensory hair-like nidocele is present and which is very important, which are sensitive to the touch here. When touch that nidocele, the cell fire the toxic containing coiled thread which can penetrate and shock the predator or the prey here. It means that coiled structure which penetrate inside the body of the prey and specifically they shock the predator or the prey here. After that moves toward the digestion here. After capturing the prey, the nematocysts which convey that food material to the mouth region here. In case of the hydra, which select the special type of the food materials in the form of the prey, which having the glutathione, that chemical in their body. It means that hydra, that animals which are very sensitive and detect the glutathione chemical in that prey, and such type of the animals they engulf here. The food is taken into the gastrovascular cavity of that hydra. In that diagram here, the mouth region is present, which is located at the terminal end or the anterior end, and which are externally encircled by the that tentacles here. Inner cavity, or as the mouth internally opens into the large central gastrovascular cavity, and that gastrovascular cavity which is secreted certain digestive enzymes and perform the extracellular digestion. It means that outside the cell in the lumen or the cavity, that name is the gastrovascular cavity. The gastrodermal cells, that is the cavity which is formed by the gastroderm, and that gastrodermal cells with their pseudopodial processes engulf partially digested food particles and digest them intracellularly. Already explained about the extracellular digestion. As the food material which is digested or partially digested, they easily trapped or catched by the cells present in the gastrodermis by their pseudopodial action or the process here. The digested food which diffuses into the cell of the entire body or the colony here. After that, the gastrovascular cavity has only one opening that serve as both a anus as well as the mouth, that is the incomplete digestive system is present in the that Cnidarians, especially the hydra, we say that here. Here only the mouth is present. After the completion of the that digested food material, the unwanted or undigested food material also expel outside the body through the mouth here. Here the anus is totally absent here. Now, in case of that another colonial animals, especially we focus toward the obelia. In the obelian that colonies, the nematocysts which are present on the oral arms, subumbrellar surfaces, especially look associated to the medusa, marginal tentacles of both zooids, that is a polyp and the medusa. That polymorphic form which is associated to that of the colony of the Cnidarians, and two different type of the zooids are present. One is the polyp and second one, that is a medusa. Here in that diagram, the medusa buds which are observed here, and these are the polyps are present. At the terminal end, the tentacles are present. After that, that polyps which are the nutritive or the feeding zooids here. It means that they specially involve for the nutrition, feeding and the digestion process here. They are mostly carnivores while the medusa is strictly the carnivores. Most of the polyps are carnivores But in case of the medusa, they are strictly or totally depends on the another animals, that is a carnivorous feeding behavior. Both these zooids which prey upon small aquatic crustaceans, nematodes, even though annelid worms and as well as the other worms also. Here in this structure, this is the polyp, we say that here, and this one is the medusa here. Here in case of the polyps, the terminal ends or terminal that end which covered by the number of the tentacles here, and at the center position the mouth is present. That mouth internally opens into the coelentron, and that coelentron is the specially we say gastrovascular cavity. There are tentacles armed with the nematocyst which capture the prey and convey it to the mouth here. We know about that, already explained about the hydra, where the nematocysts which are present is on the tentacles. In case of the Obelia colony, especially moves toward the polyps as well as the medusa, where on the tentacles or even though the oral arms, where the nematocysts are present as they capture the food material and convey it to the mouth here. The digestion is both intracellular as well as the extracellular. Digested food is diffuses into the cell of the entire colony here, as well as undigested food material which are expelled or egested outside the body through the mouth. Here also the anus is absent. Now moves toward the another animal or the group of the animal, that is a flatworms. That is a some of the platyhelminthes. One of the example just we explained here, that is a Digestion. That free living that flatworm, that is a Digestion, which are the carnivores and depends on the another animals, that is the crustaceans, many worms, nematode as well as the insects also. Here that alimentary canal is incomplete. Same thing which includes the mouth, pharynx as well as the intestine, and that intestine laterally which forms the number of the branches, that name is the intestinal diverticula. Here the alimentary canal which is incomplete shows that only the one opening is present in the form of the mouth here. Here they trap the prey by pouring the sticky secretion of the adhesive glands and the rhabditis here. Here, the pharynx is everted to the ingest the food by peristaltic movements here. Here, first of all, as the prey which close in the vicinity of the digestia, first of all, pour the certain secretion, sticky secretion by the adhesive glands and the rhabdites which are associated to the mouth region, and after that the movement of that animal or the prey which is slow, and during such time the pharynx which is everted outside the that mouth region and ingests that food material, and it moves toward the inside or inner cavity, and that ingestion by the pharynx due to the peristaltic movement of that pharynx here. Even though it's supposed to be the large animals which are present during such times, that first of all that reduce that pharynx that prey into the smaller bits by the pumping movement, and after that aided or pour the digestive juices which is secreted by the pharyngeal gland, and ultimately they are converted into the small bits and easily digest in that cavity, especially with that intestinal diverticula. After that moves toward the digestion process. In case of that flatworm Digestia, the digestion process both intracellular as well as the extracellular here. The fats when present, they probably digested extracellularly in the lumen of the intestine, while intracellular digestion which is brought about the amoeboid cells or the pseudopodial cells which are located at the lining of the intestine, and which has the ability to digest to engulf the digested microscopic particles and incorporated or transfer into the food vacuoles of that amoeboid cells here. The digested food diffuses through the wall of the intestine into the surrounding mesenchyme and distributed to all body parts here. Mesenchyme, that is a middle layer. After the collected material and stored into the food vacuoles by the amoeboid cells, they then transferred it into the mesenchymes here, and ultimately from the intestinal wall they are easily distributed by this another type of the pseudopodial cells or the amoeboid cells to the various body parts here. There is no anus already explained here, so that digested food material no doubt which are transferred to the various body parts, but unwanted or undigested food material they easily expel outside the body through the mouth here. After that, the third important point or the category of the food and the feeding, even though the digestion, that is a feeding on the liquid as well as the soft tissues. Here some of the platyhelminthes and the nematoda which has such type of the feeding habitat, it means that this specially lives inside the body of the another animals here. Especially we say that a tapeworm and the flukes which surrounded by the host tissues or the alimentary canal fluids which are highly nutritive, and that they takes the highly nutritive food material and totally depends on such type of the materials here. Here first of all moves toward the fasciola hepatica, where the feeding habitat which is observed, that fasciola hepatica which is endoparasite and digenetic, it means that the life cycle which is completed in the sheep as well as the man here. Here the alimentary canal which is incomplete, same pattern, and only the mouth is present, the anus is absent here, which includes that mouth, pharynx, then the esophagus and intestine, which is further subdivided into the many branches, lateral branches, that name is the intestinal diverticula here. Here by chance it migrate into the smaller capillaries and bile duct when feeding within the host here. Here by chance it transfer inside the body of that animal, that is sheep or even the man here, and after that it migrates to the small capillaries, and after that toward the bile ducts when feeding inside that bile duct as well as the capillaries is of the host here. They use their oral suckers to pull off and suck the food, bile, lymph or even the soft tissues from the bile duct wall here. That oral suckers which are present, which surrounding to that of the mouth here. After that, the digestion here. This is the digestive system of that animal, that fasciola hepatica, and number of the branches which are present in the form of the intestinal limbs or intestinal diverticula, we say that here. Okay. After that, in case of the digestion, that it relies on the extracellular digestion which occurs within the intestine of the host here. Second point, in case of the tapeworm, that is the Tinea solium feeding and the digestion. Here, the tapeworm Tinea solium is the endoparasite which lives in the small intestine of the man and usually the pig also. They, as the pig eaten by the man and which is contaminated, or the life stages which are present in that meat, they easily transfer into the man and lives in the small intestine of that man here. It completely lacks the alimentary canal. Here the very important point is that till that the previous explained that animals, the alimentary canal is present, which is incomplete. Only the mouth, that single opening is present, the anus which is absent. But here in case of the tapeworm, no doubt it is endoparasite, lives in the small intestine of the man and even to the pig, where the alimentary canal which is lacking or the absent in the all the stages of the life history. It transfer into a person body by the contaminated food materials here. Once it moves inside the body, the tapeworm head attaches to the inner wall of the intestine. Now, this is the head region. We say that that is a scolex here. The body which is divided into the scolex. Second one, that is just below to the other is narrow neck, and after that immature and the mature proglottids which are continued here in the segmental pattern, we see that here. Here, as the structure of that scolex, the terminal end where the rostrum is present. Basically, we say that and encircled by the hook. That hooks which are very important for the gripping purposes here. Just below to that of this, the four suckers are present, where tiny teeth which are encircled to that of the suckers here. Here, the pre-digested food in the host small intestine is the chief source of the nourishment for the tapeworms here. As they comes in the intestine, small intestine, with the help of the that hooks, rostrum, even though the suckers, they grip the inner lining of the intestine and continue the feeds on that pre-digested food material of that small intestine is of the host here. Soluble nutrients like glucose, amino acids, glycerols diffuse directly through the general body parts here. It means that here the amoebocyte cells which are totally absent, they easily absorb the food material. Here that hooks as well as suckers which are helpful for the gripping purposes to that of the animal to the inner lining of the intestine. While absorption of that food material by the outer wall or outer body surface, that name is the tegument here. After that, third is the Ascaris. That Ascaris is the endoparasite and lives also in the small intestine of the man and more frequently is of the children than the adult here. Here, the speciality of the alimentary canal, it is a straight and complete tube. Complete tube, it means that the two openings are present, the anterior opening that is a mouth and the posterior opening in the form of the that anus is present here. The food consists of the blood fully or partially digested occurring that food material occurring in the fluid which forms in the host intestine. Already explained that they live in the small intestine and whatever that digested food material which is available in that lumen of the intestine, they easily use that food material here. Even though if there is a problem or even though we say that population of that ascaris which is increases and there is a scarcity of the food material, they attack on the inner lining of the intestine. As the injury which is observed to that of the intestinal wall, the bleeding also or the blood which is oozes out and that ascaris which also use or suck that blood material also. After that, it suck that all the material which is present in that intestine of that man, partially or the fully digested food material, and they suck with the help of the pharynx whose action that is a rhythmic pumping action here. The digestion is completely extracellular in the intestine and is aided by the enzymes that is protease, amylase and the lipase. And we know about that protease which degrade or digest the proteins, amylase digest the carbohydrates and lipase that enzyme digest the lipid molecules here. It means that as they collected the food material by the sucking and the pumping action of the pharynx from the intestine of the man, that food material then transfer into the intestine of that ascaris and where again the digestion process which is started and that process we say that extracellular digestion. Here the digested food after complete digestion in the intestine of that ascaris, they absorbed by the intestinal wall and distributed to the pseudocoelomic fluid here. Pseudocoelomic fluid, that fluid which is present in between the body wall and the gut, and that space which is completely filled, that we say that pseudocoelom, and that space which is completely filled with the pseudocoelomic fluid through which transportation of the food materials, that is a nutrition, transportation of the waste material, transportation of the gonads, that is carried out here. After that, some intestinal cells also has the ability to engulf, to take the small solid food particles by the phagocytosis nature and digest them intracellularly. It shows that no doubt extracellular digestion which is observed in the intestine of the ascaris, even though some of the cells which involve is of the intestinal cells which involve to the intracellular digestion by the phagocytosis nature here, while the undigested food material which are releases outside the body through the anus here. Dear friends, here to be completed that the food and feeding nature or the pattern of the food and the feeding in the lower metazoans, which are categorized in the form of the that three categories: microphagus, macrophagy, and third one, that is a feeding on the fluids even though the soft tissues here. Here to be completed that this topic. Thank you very much.